Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. So happy to be here with all of you and seeing all these beautiful faces. We're very excited today for our Urban Devi Sangha. We have a very, very special guest today. So we have Uttama Devi Dasi, and I'll just give a short introduction and then we will begin. So Uttama Devi Dasi is a member of the Grihastha Vision Team. She and her husband of 49 years, who, like Rukmini said, have never
We're old.
or eternal. They were both initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1973. They both serve as marriage mentors and relationship trainers. They travel extensively facilitating seminars on relationship dynamics. And while at home, they help new couples via video conferencing, similar to this, using a systematic premarital education program. They also train other mature, happily married couples to do the same. And they live in Saranagati Dhama in Canada and have 3 children and 6 fun grandchildren. One more thing is that from what I remember from a program that I attended with Uttama, is that their advice that comes through is very, very accessible and very practical, things that we can start using immediately to help our relationships. And so that's why one of the reasons why this is so exciting to hear from you today. So without further ado, please enlighten us.
Okay. So I think it's my honor now to begin asking questions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Wonderful. So welcome, Uttama. We really are so honored to have you and have you grace this Sangha. I wanted to, first of all,
I just actually wanted to thank you for inviting me. I've heard so much about this Sangha, and I've always been curious, so it's just so wonderful to get to interact with you all.
Oh, we're grateful to you for being here. So first of all, I want to hold up this book. See this book, everybody? It's called Heart and Soul Connection. And Uttama and Partha are co-authors of this book. So get this book if you can. It has lots of great practical advice. So first question I would like to ask you is, what's an early spiritual memory from your childhood or your early life that you'd like to share with us?
I have this distinct memory of being in grade 4 and lying in bed at night. It was just getting dark and I could see all the stars. We were living on the prairies, so you could, big sky, you know. And I was thinking, it's so strange to just live for, I don't know, like 80 years in this huge universe that's going on, you know, forever. And we all just like this little blip in time. And I was thinking, what's the use of that? I didn't know anything about reincarnation or anything, but I just thought it was really strange. So when I look back, I guess, you know, I must have had some inkling. We all do as a soul of, you know, reincarnation. And so that's my first memory.
Thank you very much. Very beautiful. And how did you get involved with helping devotees with family relationships? How did that start and come up for you?
Your husband dragged me in.
You probably desperately needed help.
It started about a year before your husband contacted us. We had a Canadian leaders meeting, and the theme of the meeting was strengthening families. And so we were all brainstorming, and I said, well, you know, we should somehow or other introduce premarital education. You know, like the Catholics have been doing that for quite a long time. Like before you can get married in one of their churches, the couples need to undergo some premarital education so that, you know, marriages can be strengthened and there's healthier, happier families and less divorce rate. So I said, you know, maybe that's some place that, you know, we could start in our ISKCON movement, is making healthy couples who can in turn raise healthy families, and they will have healthy communities.
Wow.
So then, of course, whenever you suggest something, people go, well, how about you? I didn't say a word. I just looked at my husband to see what he was going to say. And he goes, well, maybe I could do that. And, you know, well, we've been married quite a long time, and we did have, you know, a reasonably good relationship. I will say that since we started taking training how to help others, and when you reach out and actually help others, you get so much more skilled yourself, and your own relationships become so much better. So it's actually been a godsend even for me personally. So, you know, I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Wonderful. And so this is something you do, premarital counseling. If anyone on this call is interested in premarital counseling or postmarital counseling, this is in your area.
I do prefer premarital education. We like to call it education, because men can be quite triggered that they're not good enough or something's wrong with them and they need to go for counseling. So, you know, it's just education, how to gain more skills, you know, get to know what you didn't know before marriage.
Great.
So yes, we do that. We usually do a 5-session program.
5 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And please.
Have an hour and a half each. So, you know, we try to get in, you know, as much as we can.
Great, great. And how did you come up with the title Troubleshooting Relationships? That's such a great title. How did that come up?
Because everybody has trouble with relationships. And I've noticed in my life that the quality of my life is really dependent on the quality of my relationships. And so I think that we all are looking for ways in which to troubleshoot when we have negative interactions with another, because it's hard on the heart, you know. So I think it's something that we all need to be skilled at, because we are going to make we are going to make mistakes in our relationships, and we need to have the tools how to quickly repair them so that they don't degenerate into really troublesome relationships.
So not dealing with the issues in a timely way, the issues can fester and become worse. So
correct. And also not having the right tools in which to fix them.
What are some of those tools you could share with us?
Well, I think the first thing is that we tend to be defensive. And when we're defensive, we don't listen to the other person's point of view. And one of the most important things for human beings is to feel understood. And when we don't feel understood, it's almost like, you know, we don't have air or we don't have food or water. I think it was Stephen Covey who said that, you know, after, you know, nutrition and air, the most important need for human beings is understanding. So when we don't feel understood, we tend to get defensive, hurt, maybe make wrong replies or act negatively. So I think that we all need to have the ability to see when another person's hurt and to put our hurt aside and just to take a little time to try to understand where they're coming from. And if in turn they do that with us, I think that's one of the biggest places to start, is just understanding where another person's coming from. Because when you can understand where another person's coming from, it's actually empathy, and it's a form of compassion to be able to be, you know, compassionate about their pain.
Wonderful. Can you give maybe an anecdote? A time when you were, you're talking about a specific here when we become defensive and we don't feel understood. Is there any kind of anecdote you'd like to share about that, or that's something that exemplifies that kind of feeling of not being understood? Maybe someone you've seen, or maybe from your own experience, and then how things deteriorate.
Well, I noticed that personally, when I don't feel understood, I get defensive. And I can, and when you get defensive, the problem is you can start calling out the faults in another. We just did some marital, it was actually counseling with a couple last week. And, they were trying to explain their side of the story. And the other person kind of like jumped in with, because they said something about, when their wife does this or whatever, it makes them feel a certain way. And immediately the wife just jumps and says, yeah, but you do that and you do this. And I was thinking, oh boy, that's really good. He's really going to open up and, share that again another time. Not likely. Mm-hmm. So we don't realize that we shut people down. We also hurt them when we don't do that.
But not allowing them to express, not deeply hearing them. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Not deeply hearing them. So,
and when we do that, we start to understand why. And if we start to ask a few more questions, like, why were you feeling so upset with your wife or whatever? And, he'll say, because, I'm hungry and, she never makes me prasadam on time. And I can say, well, you can't get a snack, or when you ask more questions, you find out that he actually just feels like she doesn't care. She's more about herself. She's not focusing. It's not that she's not on time or it's not there right then. When you ask more and more questions, you get down to the deeper issue of, well, especially in connected relationships, usually they don't feel understood or cared for. And then when you can see that the person's feeling, uncared for or unloved, you definitely respond in another way. So when it's friendships, it may not be down to the level of feeling unloved, but we like to try to get to the deepest hurt by asking more questions. And then when you actually see what the person's hurt about, we feel more empathetic and we can understand what we can do to correct that, because it's the real problem.
So you're talking about, you're sort of lifting up the importance of being curious about the hurt.
Yeah.
Why are you hurting? Or, I notice that you're feeling blank, blank, blank right now. And that could work for any relationship, right?
Sure.
Even God, sister, or friend. I notice that you just don't seem like yourself today.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting, the importance of asking and inquiring, because so often how are you? I'm fine. Okay, just as long as you're fine, then, right?
Right. One Rath Yatra, my husband and I, we went up and we greeted an old friend from another city. And my husband said, oh, how are you? And she said, oh, I'm fine. And we knew her husband had passed away the year before, And my husband says, oh, well, she said, oh, I'm good. My husband said, so what does good look like?
Oh.
And she goes, well, actually, my brother passed away last week. And, so she just started, when you just ask something, like you're saying, a little, just to be curious, you get something beyond the superficial answers. And what that does is it helps us connect with the other person, because that's really what we want in our lives, is connections.
I love that. What does fine look like? What does good look like? That's really, really profound. I love that. Let me ask you something. What would you consider, like say you're looking for a relationship, you'd like to be in maybe a romantic relationship, a marriage, find a partner, or even maybe in a friend. What would you say is the most important quality to look for when you're looking for a relationship?
Somebody who's kind. Actually, researchers did studies, many cultures, many countries, and the topmost characteristic that people wanted in a partner, men wanting ladies and ladies wanting men, was someone who's kind.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it? So interesting. And then, we do want to look for compatibility, but sometimes compatibility is not just, do you have the same, likes or, same recreation habits or something, because those change over time. What you might be doing when you're 20 you might not be doing when you're 40. So just to marry a person who you both love water skiing, when you're not doing that later, it doesn't go a long way.
So what are you saying about
but,
kind? Yeah, kind. What is it about kind that yeah?
So where I was going with this is, we look for compatibility, but in compatibility, we really need to find someone who we can work out difficulties with. So the person can be kind when they work out the difficulty, and they're caring about your needs. They're can look at things from your perspective. They notice when you need help, when you're hurting. That's a kind person. They see, oh, can I help you with that? Oh, are you okay? Very, very important, because when we get in close relationships, we have that inherent trust that that person's going to be there for us. So when they don't exhibit those kind behaviors, we start to feel less trust in them. And, relationships without trust, like trust is more important than love. Are you gonna love someone you don't trust? No. So, kindness goes a long way. Finding someone who's willing to work on themselves, because we all have problems. We all come with baggage. But if you find someone who's also willing to work on themselves, can look at themselves and grow, you're likely to be able to navigate, through the storms together. So I think those are, some really important things to look at. We also do want to look at a person's past relationships to see if they have
I need to interrupt something, but I know this group will appreciate it. This is purely a design question. I'm trying to hang curtains, and I need her to give me 1 minute just to tell me if I need to put this thing higher or lower.
I'm in the middle of asking questions though right now.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Oh, I'm a terrible offender then.
Because you're so kind, I know you'll forgive that right now I'm in the middle of asking questions of Uttama.
I'm terribly sorry. I thought it was like a business planning going on. Excuse me.
So, Uttama, I'll tell you, they should go above the border at the top, the trim. Make sure it's just a little bit of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm empowered to carry on. Thank you.
I will help you.
Not necessarily too much, but
in about 1 hour. He's very trustworthy, and so yes. Sorry about that. Speak more.
Being a mother with 3 kids and 6 grandkids, I've learned that you just always going to get interrupted, and you got to somehow get back to your train of thought. Well, what we're talking about? No, just kidding. We were talking about looking at our past looking at the other person's past relationships.
Yeah.
Because it's unrealistic to think that they're going to be different in this relationship than they have been in the past, unless they've done a lot of work. So, if they talk very, very negatively about their ex, if they treat other people badly, but you really nicely. Those are all, you know, red flags. So we do want to see, you know, experiences in other relationships. We do want to see their family of origin and ask them questions about how things were dealt with. Because when you get in another family, you tend to habitually do things the same way. So if their family handled conflict in one way, you know, maybe totally different than yours, or maybe they treat possessions differently. Maybe they're very possessive.Maybe they don't care for them at all. Maybe they handle money very tightly. Maybe they don't budget at all and they're always in debt, a little chaotic. Finding out about those things, you know, is very helpful to see that if it's something you can live with. Because it's so easy to get attached to the good qualities in someone, and everyone has good qualities, but really, you're going to marry a set of problems. You have problems, they have problems. And can you get along and navigate and manage that set of problems? You know, is it in your psyche to deal with that kind of thing? So I think that we do need to know what we're getting into.
Thank you. That's great. So inquiring about those or observing those exchanges. I know once you and I were talking and you said something about seeing the person in another environment, like maybe seeing them in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, or when they're doing arti, you see one persona, but then can you unpack that a little bit? Seeing the person in a different environment.
For sure. And I think it's really important nowadays because a lot of people meet online and they never personally meet another person. At least now we have video, you can at least see them. You know, that it really is a man or a woman on the other side of the screen. It's not just someone. So, but we only get to know one side of a person when we're talking. When you see the way they interact, it's a whole other side. So I remember a friend of mine, he was teaching in Europe, and one of his students knew that he just got married. So she says, oh, can you give me some advice? You know, I just met someone here at the, you know, in the courses at the temple, and you know, we've been having really nice discussions and we're, you know, thinking about getting married. And he said, well, why don't you try doing something with him, you know, outside of the devotee and close devotee environment and see what it's like. So they decided to go and visit his mom for a day trip somewhere. And they went on one of those fast European, you know, tube trains or whatever. And when they got to the destination, the door jammed and he wouldn't let him out. He got so angry, he smashed the window. So when they came back, my friend said, she said, thank you so much for that advice of seeing the person in another environment. Because, you know, we need to see how the person acts in all circumstances of life before we're going to make a decision on whether we want to spend time with them. So on that note, I would say that until you've known a person for at least 3 months, be careful how much you commit. Because when you're first getting to know someone, we're all on our social best behavior. But any of the idiosyncrasies that we have, they're going to kind of be patterns, you know? So patterns, they show up over time. So it's pretty hard for most people to hide, you know? After 3 months, little things are going to start coming out that you didn't see before. So we do want to give relationships a bit of time to get to know the person.
That's great. That's great. And you know, it does seem as though in Krishna consciousness, devotee relationships and devotee association are so key to, you know, to really advancing in Krishna consciousness. And how do we troubleshoot relationships in like a challenging devotee relationship?
So it does start with learning how to hear and understand better. You know, that I was explaining in the beginning. And one of the things with challenging relationships is that you've got to the point where you probably aren't doing the things that you like to do together anymore. You've just separated yourself and you're not actually having quality time. You're not having fun time together. You're not going out and doing something that makes you appreciate each other. Because as you start to get conflicted, you tend to get more and more apart. So part of it is not just working on the difficulty, but trying to build up the positive. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if you're not so conflicted that you can just say, hey, can we just do something positive together, you know, at least once a week? And can we have some, you know, time when we don't talk about our difficulties? And try to, you know, rebuild your positive emotional bank account. Because, you know, we've probably all heard about emotional bank accounts, right? So if your emotional bank account is big, when you have a little fight, it's like taking $5 out of a $20,000 bank account. Mm-hmm. But if you've only got $100 in the bank and you have a huge fight, you just took out $75, you know, you're going to be hurting. So we do need to build our emotional bank account. And then when it's time to work out the conflict, we need to do that at the right times in at a way when both of us are calm, and to talk about the things respectfully. So that usually requires making an appointment to sit down and consciously talk about it, not just starting on the fly, digging into each other. And to start by, you know, appreciating the other person, expressing what you do appreciate, talking about one issue at a time, really trying to understand the other person's point of view, have them understand yours, and then see if you can find some way to compromise, you know, come to some solution. And just leave it at that. And then if you can work on one little aspect, then the next week you can work on another one. Because if you bring in everything all at once and you don't ever solve any problems, it's going to be, you're just going to feel like you're not compatible and you're not, you know, you can't ever solve anything. So I think we have to be patient and start slowly, build up the positive and work bit by bit on the negatives.
So you're making the point that timing is very important. So it's not just that as I'm walking through the room, I say, and also you're saying one issue at a time, and timing is important. So it's not as though when I'm walking through the room, I just say, well, you always, 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 and you never, never, never.
And there is no response to always and never. What the person's supposed to say, you know, they're just going to get defensive. You know, with this timing, some of us, we really like to deal with things right away. And other people, they don't like to deal when they feel escalated. And that's actually really wise, because studies show that when our heart rate gets above 100 beats per minute, we may not be spewing out words, but inside, you know, the adrenaline, we're getting an adrenaline rush. And when we feel anger, we get this flood of cortisol, and it floods all the way up to your brain, and it shuts off the reasoning side of your brain. So whatever comes out is probably going to be stupid, dumb, and hurtful because you just can't say the right thing. And no matter who you are, how many years you've been practicing Krishna consciousness, that cortisol is not going to start flooding out for at least 20 minutes. It's not going to say, oh, you've been chanting Hare Krishna for 40 years. I'm not going to stay here any longer. Cortisol's cortisol. You just have to realize, just like ladies, we get our hormonal challenges. Okay, it's just the hormones. Okay, what am I going to do about it? So we need to take a break, and we need to self-soothe. We all need to learn how to self-soothe when we're not in a good frame of mind, instead of just lashing out at the other person.
How
That's
do
called
we
respect.
how do we
How do we
self-soothe?
self-soothe?
Okay.
So the first thing is noticing it. Then usually you need to take some time to yourself. And when you're feeling escalated, most likely your breathing is going to be very quick and very shallow. So taking those deep breaths is really helpful. Then do something that's relaxing for you. Maybe it's singing at the top of your lungs. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's, reading a book. The thing you don't want to do is think about what he said, what she said, whatever. That's what you do not want to think about, because you'll just bring the cortisol up again. So we want to just relax and take however long it takes until you feel calm again. And it's going to be different for different people, and it's going to be different even for you, depending on how angry you were, how long it takes to. And so, when we see couples and one person's, wanting to walk out of the room when there's a conflict and the other person's freaking out, when I explained that, I said, it's because they can't deal with it. Just give them the space. The thing is when we need the space, we also have to take the responsibility to say, I will be back in 1 hour, in 20 minutes, and then we can talk about it. It's not like you can say, oh, this is just bothering me too much, I can't handle it, and go off and never deal with it again. That's avoidance. That's not going to work. But just being respectful. Because, we actually all need and deserve full respect relationships. So whenever we don't feel that the other person is being respectful and they're escalating, or when we're escalating, we need to say, just wait a minute, we need a time out, because I deserve full respect. I will be back when you've calmed down and we can talk about this calmly. And if you have a partner or a friend who's very, very, animated, and they have a hard time with their anger, you just phone up before you come back and you see if they've calmed down. And if they haven't, you say, okay, well, I'll call you again in another few hours. Maybe you have to go sleep at a friend's house. Okay, I'll call you tomorrow. But if you just get in the habit of only accepting respect, that's what you're going to get.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This is all so deep and so helpful. So why is it that we tend to be less patient and less compassionate with the people who are closest to us? Like, maybe I can be really a nice devotee when I'm at the temple and walking by people that I don't know so well, but then my kind of woman tigress comes out when I'm with the person I love the most, either my partner or my god sisters or my sister, my mom. Why is that?
Because we have higher expectations for them. We expect that they're going to be there for us. Like you go on Harinam and someone says, what's with that, bird droppings on your head? You could care less. But, if your husband says, you put on the worst tilak I've ever seen, you're going to be pretty, it's going to hurt, right? So one thing is, we do expect the other person to be there for us and to care. So it does hurt more in closer relationships. But we do tend to get familiar. And so we can be the nasty one too. It's not to just, because we get overly familiar and we expect that they're going to understand I'm in a bad mood and they're not going to take it personally. But that doesn't really give us the excuse to, be nasty or say hurtful things.
So, and you were talking about timeouts. So you're saying timeouts are not just for your kids? Timeouts can be willful and chosen and for ourselves and respectfully done?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Timeouts with kids should not be done as a punishment. If your kid needs the timeout, I would actually recommend you go and have the timeout with them, because they don't need to be abandoned. They need help on managing and learning how to self-soothe themselves. Self-soothe themselves. Let's say that all three. We can say that 3 times fast. No, anyway, because that's a huge skill for a kid to learn. How to learn how to self-soothe, to learn how to name our emotion that we're feeling, because when we can name it, we can see what we can do about it. So the younger a child can learn to identify their emotions and see, oh, if I'm upset that someone didn't share, okay, I realize, my emotion is I'm upset my friend didn't share. So what can I do when my friend doesn't share with me? And then they can learn how to navigate those things. So then they can troubleshoot their relationships from a very young age. So it's really, really helpful that part of the self-soothing is to try to name your emotion and try to understand what steps you can take now to deal with that particular emotion or hurt. Because otherwise it's just like this overwhelming feeling and you can't think, what is the next step? But by being able to calm down, kind of focus on your body a little bit, where your heart's beating fast, if your palms are sweaty, like that, and relax your breathing, you kind of focus on the now. And then you can see, what is my emotion? And then, if I'm feeling that, what are some steps that I could take? And then it becomes, realistic to troubleshoot.
So it's really interesting. You said a child shouldn't be asked to have a timeout by themselves. So I'm just trying to picture how this would work. You're sending the child to their room to have a timeout. Think about what you did. You're acting like a monkey at the dinner table or whatever it was. So does the parent, the chastising parent, go with the child into the room and say, what? Let's take a deep breath? Or how would that work to not have a timeout by oneself?
Just what you're saying. I would say, you seem to be having, some emotions right now at the table. Why don't we go to another room and, we can, give you time to calm down. Because, otherwise it seems something like a punishment, because discipline means to give life to knowledge. And we see that Prabhupada was so expert at that. He would give life to knowledge, and then we could see what to do next. It's not just a matter of punishment. So I've forgotten your original question, but I think it's, you say, what does it look like? So it's helping them to manage their emotions. We can't expect that they're going to be able to do it at the age of 2. We're going to give them the skills that they can do it.
That's great. Do you have any anecdotes or any examples that come up for you of people who've done this, or people who failed at this, or any case studies, without naming names, but any case studies you'd like to share? Because that's always so interesting to hear. I love what you said about discipline means to give life to knowledge. And when you said that, I immediately thought of Srila Prabhupada, and so profound. So could you share any examples of doing it right, doing it wrong?
Well, one time at the Sunday feast, our grandson it was time to go home, and our daughter was trying to get him to come home, and he just didn't want to. He was like crying, and he was probably 3, throwing a fit and all this, and he just wasn't coming, and making a fuss about it. So finally she picks him up and just takes him out and puts him in the car seat. My husband and I walked by, and he's like screaming and kicking and yelling, and my husband stuck his head in the car window and he said, "Giridhari, you really like playing with Narangi, don't you?" He goes, "Yeah." And he just calmed down, because he just wanted to acknowledge that he was sad leaving his friend, So there's a little example of how the empathy actually helps, just to help them understand their emotion.
That's beautiful. Even Krishna doesn't want to come home for lunch when Mother Yasoda is calling him, right? He wants to stay and play with his friends. That's a great example of just expressing that empathy that made him sort of unwind. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. What if someone you really love a lot, like your partner or your sister or your mom or your favorite aunt or your brother, is just not interested in Krishna consciousness? Especially we see this with marital relationships, but even other relationships. What can you do? Can you do anything? Is there any hope? What's your advice? You just really want this person to be able to get it, and they're just not getting it.
It always starts with us being a good example. And I think that it's really a time when we need to really access our own higher nature. Because we see that, you know, on the lower platforms of spiritual life, like Kanishta, it's really important that everybody's a certain type of devotee in a certain way, in a certain situation. Otherwise, all is lost. But when we come to the next platform, Majjhima, you know, we see some people are just not there yet. You know, other people we know who to make our friendships with, be close with. Other people we, you know, encourage. So, you know, we do need to see where a person's at. But if you really come to the higher platform, the Uttama Adhikari, you actually see everyone as a devotee of Krishna. And on one hand, we need to treat everybody with that respect that they are the devotee. And when we do that, we can actually have good relationships, even if the person isn't a devotee. So say we're married to somebody who's not a devotee, and we're always seeing what they're not instead of seeing what they are. It's, you know, it's not a good scenario. And I've seen so many relationships where one partner is not a devotee, but they've offered so much support. And just having that, you know, supportive, loving relationship can go a long way for your own Krishna consciousness, even if your partner is not practicing devotion in the same way that you are. And like I know of someone, she was, you know, really thought she needed to have a devotee for a husband who practiced spiritual life just like she did. And so she got so disappointed that she actually left the relationship. But they already had a couple of kids. And once she left the relationship, she had to get a job, and she had to get actually 3 jobs to make enough money to support her kids. And she was never able to practice her spiritual life the way she was before when she was in the relationship. And then she realized her husband didn't mind that she did all kinds of service, that she would go to the temple, he supported her and the kids. You know, and she realized, I had no idea how much he was giving me. I was like such a fool, you know. So it really does pay to look at the good side of people. And, you know, that really encourages them. And, you know, when they see that we are good devotees and what we do has made us a better person, then they may want to also do that.
So you're saying that judgmentalism of a neophyte consciousness, of a Kanishta neophyte devotee, that, oh, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not chanting the way I chant, you're not, you know, dancing the way I dance, or whatever it is, you're not wearing the sari properly the way I wear it, or you're not, you know, whatever it is. So that judgmentalism is actually, you're saying, is very counterproductive in attracting others to Krishna consciousness.
For sure. Yeah. I think that judging is what Maya does. Krishna's just like happy and accepting whatever we can do. We don't want to get over and, you know, do Maya's job. You're not doing this just right, you know.
That's really brilliant. Judging.
And if you switch that around and someone did that to you, how are you going to feel?
Krishna is always encouraging. I know Srila Prabhupada says Krishna is ever inviting the fallen conditioned souls to associate with him in pastimes of love. That's really profound. Maya is judging and Krishna is inviting. Right.
That's her job. Her job is to see what we're doing wrong and keep us away and fan what we're doing wrong and, keep us separated from Krishna. That's her job.
So when we start doing in a relationship, judging and nitpicking and not encouraging the other person, not noticing what they're doing right, not fanning the flame of positive relationship or positive feedback, we're actually driving a wedge in their ability to be Krishna conscious or even kind in consciousness.
Sure.
Wow, that's really powerful. So what about when things really do get bad, if they really get bad? How do you know when it's time to get counseling, to get assistance, to get help, to reach out?
It's kind of interesting how we think that our relationships, that we don't need help. We think it's just supposed to be automatic. When we meet somebody, the fairy tale romance, we get married and we live happily ever after. And as soon as something's gone wrong, it must be time for divorce. We don't understand that things take hard work. So number one, we're really unrealistic that we know everything. We wait too long to get help. We don't take premarital education in the first place. There's my plug. To be able to recognize, when things go off. There's been research that people wait 6 years too long before they go and get help. People have usually been struggling for, like a long time before they get help. And then it's so hard to fix it. The quicker you can fix something, the smaller fix is going to be. We know that from everything in life, whether it's your car or your body or,
Yeah, when we started this conversation, I'm not sure if we were being recorded yet, but you said couples that are conflict avoidance, couples that tend to avoid dealing with the conflict, have more breakups than couples that engage more in finding out the reason, or whatever. How would you term that, or how would you unpack that?
Well, because conflict to some degree is good because it helps you to grow. It helps you to tweak what's going wrong. Just avoiding doesn't help you to grow or make adjustments and see what you need to be doing to make the relationship work better. So fighting in itself isn't bad. It's how you fight and how you repair. That's what's crucial. So, your original question was, just before that one was, what to do when your relationship's really, really troubled. I would really recommend getting some professional premarital counseling, because it's probably going to be so, the hurts are going to be so intertwined with everything else that it's going to be hard for you to objectively separate them all as a couple. So there actually is a lot of good marriage therapists out there. You may have to look and find one who's specifically experienced with counseling couples, because counseling couples is not the same as being a counselor. So you do want to find somebody who's expert in couples counseling. So the thing is that you can go to, say, the Gottman Institute. They've done research on couples for a long time. They will have on their website Gottman trained therapists.
Gottman?
Yeah. So then you can find some that are, or you can say try Sue Johnson's emotionally focused couples. If someone's trained by her, or maybe trained by Terry Real with, I forget what he calls his, relationship something or other. But you just sort of find the experts that write the books on couples counseling. Then they'll have a website, and then they'll have people trained by them, and then you'll get expert couples therapists.
Is it important if they're devotees? Is it important if your counselors are devotees?
It can be helpful, but it's not 100% necessary. Because if they're good, all couples go through the same difficulties. Like when we first went and did courses in South Africa, I thought, okay, you know, they're going to be, you know, like totally different. Maybe they don't have the, you know, they're not going to like the way we present things. And we found wherever in the world we go, couples have the same problems in the same way. So, you know, if you can find it, but there's not so many devotee counselors out there that are expert in couples counseling. So, you know, if you can't find one, I would just find a good, you know, couples therapist.
And what if you feel like it's just water under the bridge at this point? I just don't care anymore. I don't love him anymore. I don't love her anymore. Did I just make the biggest mistake and marry the wrong person? I just don't even love this person anymore. I don't even care anymore. What if you're in that place?
It could be fixed. If you're at the point of one of you feels contempt for the other, good luck. But if it's just you're sort of feeling out of love, love is just a feeling. You know, you can spark that flame again by good counseling and time. Because love is something that develops when we do loving behaviors. We can feel love again. So because we're not sharing loving behaviors, we don't feel the love. Love mostly comes when we give love. Like if you gave a big list to your husband of all the things you wanted him to do for you, because you're not feeling loved, but you didn't do anything back to him, for him, you wouldn't feel loved. When you actually give love, you feel love. That's why we start to develop love for the deity. We engage in service for the deity and we start to develop love. We see that our kids, they don't thank us for getting them to do the homework, for making them clean their room, you know, but we love them because we're doing the service. We're, you know, doing the job of a mother and raising them nicely. So we develop love. So love is developed by service. And if we don't feel love, it's because we're probably not doing enough loving things for the other person.
Beautiful. So beautiful. So here's a question for you. You know, men, dealing with men, they so often just don't want to talk or express emotions, and they just go into their retreat cave default. And how, I mean, women, you know, maybe we've all heard that women like to express their feelings by talking and relax by talking. So when dealing with a man, sometimes you feel so
Alone.
alone. Am I just talking to a wall? Or so how do you deal with that?
Well, you know, it's a little bit of a pattern that's worked up over time, because when you first met the person, he was probably talking to you. So part of it, we have to take responsibility for, because well, let me start by saying that men aren't as dependent on sharing emotions as women are. We're really emotionally wired. We need to express emotions to people and to others. Otherwise, we do feel alone and abandoned. Men are not so wired for them. They don't really care if they get the emotional, you know, exchange. But they do care if we're just like around. They're happy if we're in the same room, the same house. They'll be okay. They don't really need that emotional connection. But they actually do better when they learn how to be able to express their emotions. You see, society has bred men have two emotions: lust and greed. anger and lust, basically. Anger and lust. That's all that's manly. Those are the only manly emotions that you can still feel and be like praised by the other men. You know, as soon as you have other feelings, they just call you a sissy. They, you know, suck it up, just keep on working. You know, the workplace doesn't appreciate it. They just want you to keep working no matter what you feel. So it's actually really hard for men. Even from a young age, you see that people, they tell the boy to stop crying, but they put the girl on the lap, you know, and, well, what's wrong, you know, and a boy, you just say, stop crying, you know. So part of it's not their fault. Society's bred it out of them. So they have a hard time accessing their emotions. When it comes to men-women psychology, men are wired to want to protect and look after us. So because they have that protective nature, if we don't feel happy or we look in distress, they feel inadequate. Like, oh, I can't make my wife happy. She's upset with me. You know, she's upset I'm not, you know, saying something in the right way. So when a man feels inadequate, they tend to do one of two things. They tend to either get angry because, you know, you wounded their sense of self, or they withdraw and go to the man cave. Because they maybe don't understand that when we've come to them and we said, you know, this I have, you know, we pour out all our emotions, and they have this tendency to like fix it. And that's not what we wanted to hear. We didn't want to hear that solution. So then we get upset, and then they go, okay, last time I gave a solution, she didn't like it, so I better just be quiet. You know, it's like, and so, you know, and then as we're quiet, we demand this emotional reciprocation. We chase after them, and he goes, look, if I do anything more, she's going to get me again. I better just go retreat into my cave. So, you know, we actually need to like help them through that and not trigger their sense of inadequacy. And men have to not trigger our sense of feeling alone and abandoned and fearful. So the one thing is, when you're feeling alone with your emotions and kind of abandoned, he's also feeling that same pain, just for a different reason. He's feeling it because he's feeling a little bit of shame and inadequacy and like that. But if you realize that for different reasons you're feeling the same thing, then you can reach out and try to find some way to connect. So maybe you have to, you know, stop with your emotional, talk to me, and just like, you know, sit down and put your hand on his hand and just, you know, sit with him for a little while, and then, you know, ask him a question or something, or, you know. Wow. So you just kind of have to ease him into it.
Fantastic.
And, you know, when we get emotional, we tend to be like abrupt and fast and doing things. And men don't actually like quick switches. You know, their nervous system doesn't respond to like switching quickly like that. So the best thing we can learn as ladies is the slow startup. Just, you know, start a little slow and a little gently, and then their nervous system can tune into it. Otherwise, it's just wired for, you know.
I'm just laughing because it's so funny, because so often when I ask an Uttama Prabhu a question, he'll say, I'm slow. I need time.
Yeah.
And even what I wanted to share that's really hilarious is when we were in the Denver temple before we got married, devotees were telling him, oh, she's so perfect for you. You should marry her. And he actually said to me, look, I'm not going to marry you until I'm good and ready to marry you, even if Krishna himself and told me to marry you. I would not marry you unless I was ready to marry you. I mean, I wasn't being all needy or anything, but it was just so
right.
He always says, I'm slow. I'm not like you. I'm slow. I need more time. I need to think about it. And then, you know how you say to kids, if you need an answer now, the answer is going to be no.
Right. We don't get it. We're a little slow too, aren't we, learning?
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is so helpful. And I think you shared so many brilliant little sutras of wisdom. So I'm so grateful. I'm sure we're all grateful. I want to turn it over to Leela, who has questions from the chat. And I'm sure there will be many, so many helpful, so many things I jotted down that I'm going to put in my book, little wise sutras of gems of wisdom. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, there is so much, and we have some really, really good questions. Some were similar to some of the things that Rukmini was asking, so I'll ask those a little bit towards the end, and I'm sorry if we don't get to your question. Possibly, if that happens, we can always send them over to you and then send them in a chat or something like that. So I have one question here. It says, regarding respect, as devotees, we're always hearing that we shouldn't expect respect. So, for example, lower than a grass in the street. And yet, Uttama Prabhu, you're telling us to expect respect in our relationships and that we should communicate that. How do we deal with a devotee husband who uses our Krishna consciousness philosophy, looking down on us or thinking less of us when we ask for respect, as though we're not being Krishna conscious if we expect and ask for respect? So as though we're being egotistical. I find it hard, being that my husband is quite senior to me on the path, not age-wise, and I've often felt that he feels superior to me because of it. So he doesn't take me as seriously as he ought to with certain things. This is really hard for me. Yes, thank you. And I think this idea of like, how do we balance out this idea in any relationship of being humble and then also expecting that respect from others?
I think that the first place to start is that we do need to be respectful. So we can't be expecting respect if we're not respectful in the first place. And also, you know, we do need to be humble, realize where we're wrong, make amends, make apologies. Those things all apply. At the same time, good relationships do need boundaries. And just like if we have certain boundaries, the other person knows what to expect, we know what to expect. So relationships, in order to be relationships, they need to be reciprocal. So men, they really need respect. And sometimes people are looking, sometimes we see men are looking for this submissive wife. Submissive wife doesn't mean somebody who just, you know, jumps when they bark. So submissive actually just implies respect. I think we have, you know, sometimes a wrong interpretation is given to that word submissive, that we just have to, you know, do everything without having any opinion or any feelings ourselves. Because in love, that reciprocal respect will always be there, that I care about the other person and their feelings. So we also have to have enough self-respect that we realize that we are eternal parts and parcels of Krishna. And because we're part of Krishna, we are deserving respect. It's not that we are, you know, we don't want to lose our sense of self. So how to find that balance, understanding we are valuable parts and parcels of Krishna, at the same time not being puffed up and demanding this respect and being rude to everyone else. It's that fine line of balance that's there in every aspect of Krishna consciousness. And if somebody is feeling very low or very bad, if somebody's feeling bad or in distress, we need to have that compassion and empathy to reach out to that person. Not to say that I have to be humble and feel bad. You know, that isn't the true definition of the term. So there is a time for nicely saying that, I'm sorry, but that's not respectful and I deserve more. And you just say it nicely, don't go on and on and on, but just because you do have to understand that, you're Krishna's and he doesn't want you to be treated like that.
Thank you so much. Here's another question. So you touched a little bit on when people feel contempt and that love is something that comes from loving behavior. But this question is saying, what are the limit points when you know that a couple's relationship is unrepairable? How to know that this is it, you can't repair this anymore?
Are you talking about, I assume they're talking about their own relationship because it's hard to look and see another person's, right?
Yeah.
It's a really hard decision to make. You're probably going to need a lot of prayer. You're going to need some, probably some outside guidance. You are going to want to check if you feel that there is emotional or physical abuse in the relationship. I don't think you should feel bad about needing to get out of it, because it's very, very damaging to live with a large amount of emotional abuse or physical abuse. Please don't, be a martyr and think that you need to stay in that kind of a situation. On the other hand, if you feel that you do for some reason, we are not going to judge you in any way, because every person has to make those decisions themselves. But the question was, how do you know when it's time to get out? So I would say when there's emotional or physical abuse, that's definitely an indication of time to get out. I think when you've kind of lost your sense of self, it's pretty hard to continue in relationships. I don't know how much more I can say, because it's going to be so individual for so many people, and it's often a time when people go for couples counseling, when they have to decide if they're going to stay or get out. And I would say that good couples counseling is probably going to be one of the ways in which can help you decide whether it's repairable or how to exit it in a way that's the least emotionally damaging to the two of you, because it's all, divorce and separation is always very, very hard to go through. So, you need help.
Thank you so much. So this, I guess this follows with the next question. You did mention to us some different names of people that we can look to for counseling. I'd like it if we can put maybe your information too on our chat group. And one question I was wondering is, do you offer counseling to just these individuals that are looking for some understanding in their own relationships, or is it only for couples?
On our website, VaishnavFamilyResources.org, we have, under resources, we have counseling, and you will see a list of devotee counselors there who offer counseling help. So you're welcome to contact any of those devotees there. It's not a huge resource. We definitely need more devotee counselors. So if anybody, would like to pass along any to us that we can add to the list, that would be great.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely will add that for people who are looking for that. Our next question is a few, it's a couple, 2 or 3 questions put together. So this person is expressing that they tend to shower the other person with empathy. It's creating a one-sided relationship. And also because of that, he feels very comfortable and seems to be very pleasant with other people, and not this individual. And then the response from him to that is that I can be myself with you. So it's maybe a breaking down of the boundaries. And so the question is, how do I approach this in a non-confrontational manner?
Mm-hmm. By having a discussion where you're using what's sometimes called reflective listening, where you hear from him and he hears from you. And I would try to just express how you're feeling. They have this thing using I statements. It's kind of a cliche, but it's because it works. You just express your feelings, I'm feeling like this. I know you're just wanting to be yourself, but when you say that to me, it makes me feel, So you just take responsibility for your own feelings. And then if you need him to do something different, then just simply say, and I would like to request that you do, and just say it very succinctly. Just, make a request. Or you can say to him, when you say to me that blah, 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 it makes me feel, and just say it. And so I would appreciate if you would, because sometimes they don't know how to say it in another way. So you could, help them say it in another way.
So the follow-up question from this same person is saying that what if that other person, that partners, does not seem interested in settling it? So I guess it would become a one-sided thing if you're trying to express your feelings, but that person either seems like they don't care or may not. How would they handle that?
Mm-hmm. They may seem like they don't care. I would again request what you do need, just kindly in a short words, because they probably don't know how to give it to you. You're assuming that they do, but they've probably been raised in such a way that they don't know how to give it to you. And when they do it, respond well, and even if they try a little bit, respond well. We read this article one time from this lady who was an animal. She was writing an article about how people train animals, and she said that when they want to train a gorilla how to ride a skateboard, they just put a skateboard in the room, right? And if the gorilla gets anywhere near the skateboard, throw him a peanut. Right? If he actually gets on the skateboard, banana. If he rides the skateboard, 3 bananas. And next thing you know, within a month, this gorilla's riding the skateboard. So she said, I thought, let me try that with my husband. So she said, could not get him to put his laundry in the basket. It was just like all over the floor. So she got tired of nagging him, right? So she said, okay, one day I noticed that the socks were a little bit closer to the hamper. So she said, I went over and I gave him a hug, didn't say a word. She says the next, somehow or other, if it was just a little bit closer, another hug. And then finally he caught on, and he started laughing, and then he just started putting his clothes in the hamper every day. So, sometimes we have to,
It sounds like we have to be creative.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this one, I think you touched a little bit on this, some of these points, but I'd like to ask it just so that we are asking as many of them as are coming up. How do you know when you're associating with someone if they are the person you want to marry? What are the qualities to look for in a potential husband? So you spoke a little bit about the kindness. And when is something in the other person something you can work with, and when is it something that is a deal breaker?
I'm just going to go back one step and share with you a relationship model that I learned from one of the groups that I got some training for. It's called the, what's it called? It's called the RAM, a relationship assessment model, relationship attachment model. Wrong. It's a very spiritual name, so I liked it. So when you're getting to in a relationship, you need to know enough about a person. So you need to know their family of origin, what their conscience is like, you know, how do they respond to things? Do they actually live their values, or they just talk one way and have different actions? You want to see their you know, what kind of relationship skills they have, and you want to see their family of origin and you know, their past relationships. So you want to know different things about them. So knowing is one thing. Then when you know someone a little bit, you can begin to develop some trust in them. We're not going to trust somebody that we don't know. So the more you can know about someone, you begin to trust them a little bit. And then when you see that you can trust someone, then you know you can rely on them to be there to pick you up from work when they say or whatever. And then I should grab it. I have one. Know, rely, no, trust, then rely. Then you can think about making a little bit of commitment. Oh, you know, maybe you'll commit to only be getting to know them, you know, or whatever. So you need to take time to see if you can actually, according to what you know about the person, you can rely and you can trust. So with this relationship model, they make it like those equalizers on a soundboard, you know, the no has to be higher than the trust, then the rely, then the commit. It's always going to be in that order. And then they recommend, you know, then you can think about maybe more romantic, touchy things. Because we see nowadays in relationships, you know, there's this hookup culture, right? Where they jump into bed on the first one, they don't know the person, they can't rely on them, they don't even know if they can trust them. There's no question of commitment, but it's bonding. So you have naturally some expectation for the person, you know, because there's no way that sex is not relational. It's never just recreational. Human beings, man or woman, always expects some type of relational interaction from sex. You know, much as they say there isn't, we just have that expectation. So we're crazy to do it backwards. We want to do it the other way. So that's the first part on trying to figure out how you can get to know someone in a better way. And then for the deal breakers, was that the second part of the question? I think you have to know yourself. Like me, I don't come from a family that was drinking or like that. I wouldn't know how to deal with someone who had addiction problems. That would be like really hard for me. I think that's hard for anybody, but you know, that would be one of my deal breakers, you know, addictions. And it probably should be, you know, most people's deal breaker, any kind of addictions. So I guess you see, you know, like honestly see what you can handle and what you can't. And if the person needs to do a lot of self-work, I would give it some time. And also we should have the courtesy that if we have a lot of trauma from our childhood, maybe we need to do the work on ourselves before we get into a relationship with someone else, or at least start or do a big part of the work. We're not going to get it all done, but, you know, have that respect for another person that, you know, do the work that we need to do. So I think a deal breaker is not having that respect and seeing that a person is a blamer. They blame other people for everything because you're going to be the next one that's blamed. Can't regulate their own emotions well. And a lot of anger, addictions, those are some definite red flag deal breakers.
Yes, this know yourself seems like it would help a lot of just knowing what we're able to deal with and not. And then so it makes us, I get the sense that it empowers us, right? So then we don't become victims to a situation or just have to deal with something. Like it gives us the choice. So thank you for that. This question is related to the kindness, right? You spoke about kindness and says, kind to whom? I've met people famous for their kindness to others who would bring all their burdens home and complain. How can the two people be each other's allies, and how can they work together to solve their differences?
Well, obviously you want them to be kind to you also. So if you're going to marry someone, you want someone who's kind to you and everybody else. So kind to everyone. And the second part of the question was?
How can two people be each other's allies, and how can they work together to solve their differences?
When we get in a relationship, we do need to try to have that team spirit, you know, together, everyone achieves more. So we do need to not just be focusing on ourselves to see what the other person needs. At the same time, look after our own needs well enough that we have the strength to look after the other person's needs. So when you're in a relationship, when you need to make decisions, you need to look and see, is this going to be good for our relationship? Not is it just good for me? Is it just good for him? Is this going to be good for our relationship? That's a good check and balance to see if you're making good decisions as a couple in order to make a team, to, you know, work as a team. So of course, when you're in a relationship, different people are struggling at different times. And sometimes it seems like we have to help the other person more, and then there's going to be a time when they're helping us. So it's not always going to be, you know, equal every minute and every day. And we don't want to be scorekeepers. We want to just be there, you know, to help the other person as much as they can. And we hope that they're going to be there to help us, you know, as much as we can, as much as they can. You know, we live in a community, and you have to apply for membership to buy land in Saranagati. And I've noticed over the years that there's many people who are really nice people, and they're even my friends, but they just don't do well in community. You know, they just somehow, it just doesn't work for them, you know? So sometimes I wonder if it's like that with relationships too. People just don't know how to work together, you know? They might be a nice person, but they just can't seem to, you know?
Yeah, wow. So we only have about another minute or two for these questions, but this one I think that is important. Is there a therapeutic help within the devotee environment to help deal with sexuality in relationships? My biggest difficulty in the past, and when it mattered the most, when children were little and the issues of consent and respect were crucial, there was practically no support from devotees because it's such a taboo. So can you just explain a little bit of how we can, who do we talk to just get past that, like, no one wants to talk about it situation?
You could talk to my husband or myself. We have a chapter in our book on that, and my husband got the honor of writing that chapter, and he decided to title it "The Hot Potato" because nobody wants to touch it. And we find that whenever we do premarital education or wherever we go and do seminars, we do talk about it. And people go, oh my gosh, why didn't somebody tell me this way back when? I can't believe how much stress and anxiety we've gone through over this. So it definitely needs to be talked about. I don't think it needs to be talked about on the Vyasa during Bhagavatam class. But there does need to be, you know, forums for talking about that. And, you know, because it's a private matter, I do feel that it does need to be, it's a one-on-one, you know, or small group conversation. So for sure it needs to happen. And whoever that person is, she's definitely welcome to give me a call. Oh, I see someone posted that Mahatma Prabhu set up a men's group to discuss sexual issues, addictions, violence, addictions, etc. Yeah, that's really good because that's even beyond what this person was asking. You know, and you know, it's Kali Yuga. There's definitely needs to be a place to ask sexual questions because pornography is the next pandemic, and we all have instant access, and it's very difficult to I forget where I was going with that because I was reading comedies. There's also a women's group. You know, they need to be, people need help with them, and it needs to be talked about. So Kamini is also letting us know that Mahatma Prabhu does run women's groups. He doesn't run them. Women's groups are run by women for people with, you know,
so it seems like there is support. There are places and people willing to speak about it, and I think you're right. It should be talked about if people have questions, and shouldn't feel bad to ask them, to bring them to someone's attention. Thank you so much. So just to honor the time space here for everyone, we'll close here. And I just have a couple of announcements for everyone. Thank you all so much for your presence and your attention. Our next Urban Devi is August 30th, where Rukmini Devi Dasi will be speaking on the glories of Srimati Radharani. So last year we did the same thing around this time, and it was so beautiful. The link for today's recording will be up on our WhatsApp group. Within the next 24 hours, Rajarani will put it up. Champakalata has put a link to the WhatsApp group. If you're not on it and would like to be on it, then please just copy and paste or click on the link. And we will put some of the information, we'll collect some of the information that Uttama has provided as far as counseling, so that people at least will have some resources to look into if they want to go a little bit deeper with this work. So I think that's all of it. Thank you all so very, very much. And Hare Krishna. Lovely Devis.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful to be with you all today.
Thank you for your wisdom and your kindness.
You can marry me.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Uttama.
Wonderful and useful. Thank you.
I have a question. This discipline means to give life to knowledge. Did you say that it was something Srila Prabhupada said?
No, he didn't say it. We're just saying that Prabhupada exemplified it. He didn't say that.
Okay.
It's a quote by somebody or other. I know it's the Latin meaning. That's what it is. It's the Latin meaning of discipline. To give life to
wow. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, got some good stuff from you today. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I feel like there's so much once we start getting into this relationships. We can go on and on forever, but thank you so much for your time.
We want to go on and on forever in the spiritual world and have those relationships with, Krishna and all the people in the spiritual world. We're just, hankering for that, aren't we? Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to hold up the book so just everyone can see. This is the book that's been co-authored, Heart and Soul Connections.
Is it by David Muster?
That's her husband. So,
is that what it says on my, it says that on my, no, it's by the Grihastha Vision Team. So I should have changed the name on, I'm using my husband's computer.
It says Heart and Soul Connection, a devotional guide to marriage, service, and love. And they also
Maybe Chambakalata, if you look on our website, there's a link to it right at the bottom of the homepage. Maybe you can put
Yeah.
the link there. You can get it on Amazon.
Sure, I can post that.
And don't you have another slogan, strengthening the bonds that free us? Strengthening the bonds that free us. Isn't that something from the Grihastha Vision Team?
Yes, that's our main course that we do, our main
Cool.
Grihastha course.
I do have an extra copy of that book. If anyone would like it, I'm happy to mail it to you if you're within the United States, but I'm more than happy to send it to anyone. I just ended up with a bunch of them, actually.
Okay.
Haribo. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Now Rukmini can go help her husband hang drapes.
Yes, I'm going to very kindly and go and help him.
It was
Without
very cute.
Okay, I'll tell him. He'll be happy. You give him validation. Haribo.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Hare Krishna.
Pooja, yes, Pooja, are you, Pooja,